Welcome to the sixth and final episode in this six-part series with Lysander in the project of Navigating Workplace Wellness, a project that's proudly supported by the EML Group. This particular episode will be on microaggressions, and that's something that perhaps not very many people are aware of, but they should be. Before we get started though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise their continuing connection to the land, waters and culture. I'm Liz Greenwood, Senior Policy Manager at Business New South Wales. The areas that I specialise in are workers' comp, WHS and regulation. And I have with me today Ellie Brown from the Lysander Consulting Group. Ellie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Liz. So, Ellie Brown, Senior Strategic Consultant at Lysander. I work with teams and organisations and individuals to create smart and healthy organisations where people can thrive. Thanks,
Ellie. Now, as was the case with the other episodes, we're going to follow the same structure. So first of all, why is this topic so important? Secondly, what's the key takeaway? What's the key message we want everyone to remember? Then the third component is recognising that you need some practical suggestions and tools and tips so you can put this theory into practice. It's not just theory. And then finally, where to from here? So if we start with why is it important, microaggressions, that's a pretty long word, isn't it, Ellie?
It is, and this is something that's really come into our world, and microaggressions really are those kind of subtle, sometimes small, unintentional behaviours, comments or actions that can convey kind of negative messages or discrimination towards any marginalised group, and they can cause stress in the workplace. They're cumulative and they aren't always obvious. And I want to point out that we're probably all guilty of microaggressions. And what we need to do is start to be aware of our duty in relation to not causing an environment where we're triggering a microaggression, and also because it makes people not feel safe.
So what's our key takeaway here?
So even if these microaggressions are unintended, they're still extremely harmful to a person's mental health. And I want to stress it's not one, it's not two, it's probably when we're doing it over and over again that it's cumulative, and that's when it's really causing harm to a person's mental health and well-being.
And it can be unintended, can't it?
Absolutely. I don't think most people think that they're causing a microaggression, and we'll look at some examples around some microaggressions, but we all are probably guilty of doing a microaggression. And it links to our above and below the line behaviours, making sure that we're using positive language rather than using that negative language and making people feel perhaps uncomfortable or perhaps harassed or bullied at its worst. So we're going to look at a couple of those microaggressions, and then we're going to look at a model called the SBI Model, which is a really easy feedback model that we can use for all forms of feedback, but it's really, really a great model when we want to call out microaggressions.
Okay.
So let's get into what are microaggressions. So we can have those three really kind of buckets of microaggressions, and the first one is micro assaults. So that's making derogatory remarks about a person, thinking you're being funny. And again, usually unintentional. Then we've got what we call micro insults. They're subtle snubs and demeaning behaviour, such as deliberately mispronouncing somebody's name. So again, once we might mispronounce somebody's name, that's normal. But when someone's corrected us and we're making no effort to try and pronounce their name correctly. We're doing it deliberately, perhaps because we think it's funny. Perhaps we think that, that person, it creates a laugh. It makes us feel like we're being funny. It's actually really hurting that person. If we think about it, again, it goes back to our ladder of inference. If that happened to you a lot as a child and you got teased about your name because you have an unusual name or a hard to pronounce name, that's really going to cut you quite deeply when that happens in the workplace. And micro invalidations are, again, really easy one here, when people go, oh, again, unintentional, or you don't really look disabled, or you're very tech savvy for someone your age. And that could be, oh, gee, that's really boomer of you. Things like that. Once may be okay. Getting called that all the time, or being labeled that you're not tech savvy because you're older, or perhaps even saying, oh, we'll give that to the young person because they're very tech savvy. Again, it's kind of demeaning for them. It's not a great place to be. And again, I think we've all seen different types of microaggressions that play out in the workplace.
So this tool you're talking about, what's that, the SBI tool?
So the SBI tool is a really simple tool, and I really love this tool. Again, it stands for situation, behaviour and impact. So just say that we'll use a really simple example here. So we're in the lunch service. It's really, really busy, and you're having an interaction with a customer. They're being overly kind of critical. They're speaking very rude to you, and your boss just walks in, takes over, dismisses you in front of the customer, kind of just takes over, and you feel kind of really belittled. You feel like perhaps your boss didn't have your back. Perhaps they say, oh, look, I'll handle this. You're too young to be able to handle these things, go to the back of the restaurant. So you're feeling really belittled. What you need to do is use the SBI model to have that feedback conversation with your boss, and start off by saying, we grounded in the situation. So during the lunch service, so again, time and a place. When you came up to me and you took over from that customer, that made me feel like I wasn't able to handle that situation on my own. I felt like you immediately jumped in, took their side without letting me explain what had been going on. I felt, and this is the impact, I felt disrespected. I didn't feel supported. I felt like that you didn't think that I could handle this situation. So this is helping the person to understand their behaviour and the impact of that behaviour.
And it could be unintended too, because the boss might have seen a very young, let's say, female waitress, and a much older, quite surly man being quite rude to the waitress. And the boss might have just simply seen that power dynamic being out of whack, and probably just thought, right, I'll jump in, I'll protect her from this kind of behaviour, not knowing that it was a microaggression and not intending it to be seen that way.
Exactly. So again, microaggressions are quite often unintended, and the boss here was trying to do the right thing. But again, that feeling of disempowering someone to handle a situation can be really kind of, if this is happening all the time, that person is probably questioning, does my boss trust me to handle this situation? Am I able to have that autonomy to make some decisions? So again, it's a small thing, but if it's happening all the time, that's when it kind of builds up. So this model allows the younger person, say, to explain the situation, explain the behaviour, and most importantly, talk about the impact, about how they felt, how it made them feel, so that we're able to kind of have a really good conversation and think about, there we have alternate behavior, alternate impact. So we have the power to choose. So what this person might say, you know what, I'd really like it if next time you let me actually have the chance to handle this. I've had some really good training. I understand what to do. I was about to de-escalate. This is really important to me that I step in and learn these skills. And if I need you, I will certainly come and get you. You don't have to jump in. So again, it's allowing someone to have a really good conversation and open the conversation and not cause further microaggressions to happen.
So where to from here? I guess just be aware of it.
Again, be really, really aware of it. And with microaggressions, we kind of go, once might be okay. Twice we're starting to get annoyed. 3 times or more, it's getting disrespectful. And doing it constantly all the time, when we're making jokes, when we're mispronouncing, say, people's names, where we're labeling people. If we do it over and over and over again, it becomes really hurtful. And that's not the kind of workplace culture that we want to have. So just be aware of microaggressions and be aware around how you show up.
Very good advice as usual.
Thanks,
So
Lily.
Ellie, thank you so much for your time and explaining microaggressions.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. This series has been made possible through the support of our sponsor, the EML Group. For over a century, EML has helped Australian employers navigate workers' compensation while supporting their people recover and get their lives back after workplace injury or illness. As well as being experts in claims management, they also help employers to reduce the risk of injuries happening in the first place by providing free training, tools and services like this webinar. Visit eml.com.au today to find out more and access their free range of mental health related resources.